Boa tarde a todos. Inicialmente eu elevo
Good evening, everyone.
ayahuasca como conhecemos.
Good evening. We're here to talk about ayahuasca. As you know, that's what brings us all here. We're all here together, united in our spirituality, to throw some light on a long history, 25 years old, which has taken us to victory, the legalization of the religious use of ayahuasca tea in Brazil. A 25-year-long struggle in which I played an active role. I'd like to express my gratitude to the indigenous communities of the Amazonian for being the guardians of the contemporary use of this sacred tea. I will ask for your understanding of the brief summary. For the brief summary I'm going to present, you can find much more information, for example, in the 2006 Ayahuasca International Seminar in Rio Grande in Brazil. The contemporary use of ayahuasca in the contemporary centers in Brazil started out with three main lines: Mestre Raimundo in Serra, Raimén Pere Amato, and Josep Daniel Pere Acosta, Maestro Gabriel. All three of them were persecuted and suffered from prejudices, were the object of prejudices, but it was only Mestre Gabriel who was imprisoned in 1968. He spent a night in prison, and once he was released, he sought out the head of the police of the city, who said, well, I cannot permit it, but I can also not forbid it. And that's what the chief of police had to say. They said they couldn't permit it, but they couldn't forbid it, ban it. In the meantime, UDB and other ayahuascan religions went on with their work. Mestre Gabriel in 1971 passed the statute, the bylaws creating the Centro Espiritual de Beneficencia de Unión de Vegetal, which says, amongst other things, that the disciples drink the plant out of their own free will, and the plant, ayahuasca, has been proven to be harmless to health. Now, let me open a little aside in this historic description to show the level of consciousness, the level of awareness that Mestre Gabriel achieved. Decades after this, after Mestre Gabriel said this, there were scientific tests proving this, but up until then, nothing had been done. From 1995 to 2008, the government of the US, using their scientific and police power, did not manage to prove that ayahuasca tea could be noxious to human health. So there you have it. One of the most powerful governments in the world could not disprove the truth of the wise words of Maestro Gabriel, who said that ayahuasca tea is harmless for human health. Maestro Irineo and Maestro Pereira Matos, in other words, came to say the same thing. And that's how we won our victory over the US. And we know that the main leader in that victory, which was crucial for the history of religious and civil freedom in the world, was the Conference of Joffrin, Well, we go back to 1985, the expansion of the use of ayahuasca in urban Brazilian centers. This became to be known by the media because artists used to go to these centers. In 1985, we were working under Ordinance number 2 of the Ministry of Health in Brazil under their Division of Medicine. And they added to their list of banned substances Banisteriopsis capi, Maririo, chacrona. Do you know what chacrona means in Portuguese? Because I don't. This means how ridiculous the whole thing was. They didn't even know the right name of chacrona, Banisteriopsis capi. And it wasn't just that, there are 2 other points in that ordinance. DMT is not included in this. They include the chacrona, which is the leaf. So, and also they did not first consult with the right body, which is the Federal Council for Narcotics. So by then, we were no longer in that kind of comfortable but weird limbo of not being forbidden but not being allowed either. No. In this case, tea became forbidden in Brazil. União da Vegetal, who was the main protagonist in the statement of the inalienable right of the religious use of ayahuasca tea, came to make a call upon the Federal Congress, which would turn out to be of historical importance. The petition was signed by Luis Felipe dos Santos, and it represents a plea by União da Vegetal, requesting that the matter forbidden for the use of ayahuasca should be re-examined in the light of sociological, chemical, pharmacological, anthropological, cultural, and legal constitutional elements. This petition, this call, would transform the study of ayahuasca tea in Brazil by the Brazilian government. A new guideline was established then in 1985, following the appeal of the União da Vegetal. The Federal Council Entorpecientes created a working group with people from different fields: psychiatry, psychology, anthropology. And here I'd like to single out somebody of holistic knowledge, Dr. Fernando Lindo de Sá, who during all these years showed an incredible amount of courage. He does not belong to UDB. And as part of the working group, they went on 5 different occasions to visit ayahuasca communities in Rio de Janeiro, Cray, and Amazonas, answering that plea to look at the matter in the light of different aspects, different considerations. Then in 1987, the working group decided to exclude Banisteriopsis capi from the list of banned substances. This came about after 2 years of working with the working group and visiting ayahuasca users' communities. So ayahuasca tea was being declared free, but for how long, or how long would the whole process take? Because it was taking a long time. Since in 1987 and 1988, people went on carrying out their ceremonies and drinking tea until there was another anonymous complaint which was headed by the head of repression of the federal police. I would like to call your attention to some of the sentences in that plea. It says that the users appear in large urban centers. We're talking about over 10 million fanatics, and the leaders are drug users, former guerrilla members. The plant is mixed at the moment of consumption without anybody knowing whether there is LSD or any other drug put in it. The followers are then induced into slavery and to give in excessive donations. And it finishes with a poisonous question. Is this not putting national security at risk? And this is the end of the quote. Imagine the amount of prejudice that we were suffering. So, ayahuasca legalization took a strong setback then. In 1992, there was another legal opinion which we thought was going to be final for the permanent approval of ayahuasca tea. Once again, there were new studies about the production of the drink and its consumption. And once again, Dr. Delibes Bernal de Sa played an important part in this study. In the end, they decided that there was no proof, no reason to change the decision that they had got to in 1987 in their previous report. So, the use of ayahuasca tea became once again controversial in 1995 in the light of new complaints for the alleged misuse of ayahuasca drink by a child, a minor, the daughter of somebody. It was the daughter of somebody in another society, not UDV. It was a case which appeared widely in the media in Brazil. It went back to the National Narcotics Council and the Public Ministry. Once again, the right religious use of ayahuasca was being questioned. And I would like to quote Manuel Sousa, the Brazilian writer, who says, "The world is mine." Well, it took us some time, but we did prove that the world of ayahuasca was ours. In 1998, the National Anti-Drug Council, CONAT, replaced CONFEN, which was the old body, and they took over their work. Now, why is this important, this change from CONFEN to CONAT? Well, because in 1968, the whole matter was taken to a small police authority in a minor city in Brazil. Now it was taken to the Ministry of Justice. In 1998, the matter was taken to the organ delegated by the body of domestic security. In 1999, repression continued, and there was another important landmark, something that happened in the US, in the city of Santa Fe. There, the plant was seized. There was increased pressure. The US government, together with the Brazilian government, exerted pressure to ban ayahuasca tea. They stated, and I'll quote, I will remind you that Brazil signed the UN Convention that forbids the use of DMT. So they request a report on the position of the Brazilian government, because they say they are authorizing the use of ayahuasca, which contains DMT. So there was then pressure from Brazilian society with those complaints, but there was also this new pressure coming from the US government. Now, we kept up the struggle, and Unión de Vegetal had access to a member, or to a minute of the CONAD with John Bannon, at which meeting the CONAD, with representatives from various bodies, including the federal police, they all together came to exert even more pressure on ayahuasca tea, and this coming from people who knew very little about the plant, and even less about a religion which serves thousands of families. So a member of the Congress appeared representing the Unión de Vegetal, and they presented our case. Now, the member of the police said to our representative, well, okay, you win today. We cannot deliberate on this today. Why could they not deliberate? Why could they not discuss it? Because they were not towing the initial line, which was to consider pharmacological, anthropological, cultural, societal, and constitutional and legal aspects. So the CONAD, the National Anti-Drug Council, requested an internal body, which is a scientific consultation body, the drafting of a technical report on various aspects related to the use of ayahuasca. This report was presented in 2004, and it was the foundation of the multidisciplinary group. This means two important victories for us. Between 1999 to 2002, the matter had been left in a legal grey situation. It created a lot of anxiety and concern. There were concerns mostly for the use of ayahuasca in communities and by women. Now, with this new body, it was approved that minors could take part in religious ceremonies under the guidance of the family. And the same thing happened with women and young people who could drink ayahuasca tea. This is important for all ayahuascan lines. Now, the use of ayahuasca by religious groups is contemplated, but they say that they cannot use ayahuasca other than for their religious purposes. At this CONAD resolution in 2004, they say that they need to create a multidisciplinary working group, and they then go on, the working group in 2010 publishes a deontological code, that is to say, guidelines of what needs to be done to prevent the misuse of ayahuasca. So with this, the government authorizes, but at the same time creates another working group with 6 representatives of religious societies. One of them has been present here, Edson Lodi. I was also a member of the group representing UDV. Once again, the study of the initial working group was repeated, but this time with the participation, with the involvement of ayahuascan societies. The government decided to include ayahuascan societies, ayahuascan groups, so that they would also accept the rules and accept to be ruled by them. So they said, okay, we'll sit at the same table. We'll have the state, academia, science, and ayahuascan religions in Brazil. This is an amazing example. We have at a negotiating table, at the study table, the state, academia, science, religion, to come to conclusions about something which has taken 25 years of controversy. It has been a long path, and do you remember all those conditions that had to be taken into account? Psychological, social, cultural, legal, constitutional. Well, another element was added, and if we think about it, it might be the most important one, which is the spiritual factor, represented by ayahuascan communities, which were present at that working group, sitting at the table. This proposal is a line that brings together all these groups with the involvement of science, of the state, all the different groups, consolidated the victory of ayahuascan religions. So we started our struggle at a neighborhood police station. We've ended up sitting at the table with the multidisciplinary working group, with the state, at the state chamber, Palacio de Planalto in Brasilia, where the president has its seat. This multidisciplinary working group had 6 representatives of ayahuascan religion, representatives also from the world of academia and other fields, and guests from other specialities. So this working group reached Resolution 5 of November 2004 and replaced it with a new document which gave us the victory. This resolution now establishes the deontology, the correct guidelines of what needs to be done to avoid the misuse of the plant.
Já muito conhecido, mas eu acho importante.
I'm going to quote some aspects because this is a very well-known document, but still I believe it is important to clear up some aspects. All of these deliberations were done together with some ayahuasquera societies. So ayahuasca is limited to religious rituals. In the UDV, again, the use is only for religious ceremony, for concentration effects under the responsibility of the community. And today the representative I was talking to, he told me he's got a person to carry out religious work, and that took time. Secondly, the use of ayahuasca associated to illegal psychoactive substances is forbidden. The members should not use illegal substances or alcohol or tobacco. Should refrain from using those. Ayahuasca is considered a gift from the creator, from the maker, and it is prepared in the exact amount to cater for the needs of the ritual. And so if it is needed for this authority to know every month how much plant is used, for instance in Australia or any small town in the north of Brazil, for instance, they can have an answer, a precise answer for that, given that we control like this sacrament. Also, the controls and the structure for the production of ayahuasca has been explained very clearly by Master Paulo Alfonso, including tourism and propaganda. Well, the UDV is very discreet and does not try to solicit anyone and try and find resources elsewhere. But what happens often with riverside towns and indigenous populations, they work with ayahuasca, and not all of the indigenous peoples, but the ones by the river in Brazil, they have this production chains in which they earn practically nothing. It all goes to the tourism promoters, and we cannot accept that because in some instances there is labor exploitation, there is no respect for the actual producers. And the therapeutical usage will depend on the professional skills and capability and scientific purposes. This is according to a Brazilian law. In Brazil, there is a legal ban on healers, on curanderos, and it is believed that there are healing properties of ayahuasca based on faith. So in 1996, the UDV, for the first time, actually I was interviewed for that procedure, and a procedure was started then, and it prevails. And as for the use of ayahuasca by underage people, it is still compromised, and same thing when it comes to pregnant women. It is also regulated by law, by individual options. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I would just like to reaffirm my profession of faith and to serve, which is also the occupation of many of us here present, regardless of whether you are a scientist or activist or physicians, because the light that brought us together here is ayahuasca. It is the main reason for being here. I am hopeful, and I believe that we all should share this hope that someday the governments of the world, the scientists, the academia, religions, leaders, indigenous peoples, and the one we owe so much to, they should all sit around the table for once illuminated by the light of ayahuasca, and then we can have the sacred right. We already have we should have the legal right. We already have the sacred one to use this plant based on love and light, and for social justice, for the use of ayahuasca. Thank you very much.